Hi, good morning, everyone. Still morning here in Central Time. We are super excited for this panel this morning. We're going to be talking about the value of public-private partnerships. We have an excellent group of panelists who served in a variety of public sector and private sector roles and really provide a really unique perspective on what it means to work with the government. Oh, hopefully that's not me. Good. Okay. A really unique perspective in working with the government and some of the challenges and some of the pain points in doing that. So I'm going to introduce our panelists really quickly and then have them speak a little bit about their role, what they currently do. I'll start with Josh.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's really exciting to be here and to be back with people at an event at South by. It's invigorating. So my current role is to really help Google bring the magic of our products and services to the mission of government. I do public sector strategy and innovation at Google, but I really think I'm here because my prior job was running the Defense Innovation Board and being part of this broader innovation movement and ecosystem in DoD, which has given one of the leading lights of that community is the Army Software Factory. So it's really a privilege to be here.
Thanks, Josh. Dr. Rhodes?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm glad to be here too. I think the only reason I'm invited here is because this is our building. But yeah, Chancellor of Austin Community College. Love having all of you here visiting us. And this wouldn't be possible without, let me first say, our Board of Trustees. So they are so interested in this and so sold on this partnership and relationship that I've got three of them here with us. So I've got Dr. Nana McCraven, who's the chair of the board, and Dr. Nora De Hoyos Comstock, who's the vice chair of the board, and Dana Walker, who's a trustee. So thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. I want to reemphasize consistently, working with Austin Community College and being inside this space has been a dream come true. There's nothing like being able to partner with a community college. So I want to put a plug there. It's been great. And Abdul.
Hi, guys. My name is Abdul Subhani. I'm the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. I got appointed about 2 years ago, almost the same time when we were working on the project of Software Factory. So got to work very closely with, of course, Dr. Rhodes and Colonel Vito and Major Jason from the start.
And he's being modest. He's also the CEO of a very large tech company here within the Austin area, Syntex Technology. So it's just a side job, side hustle, like the CASA here. So very fortunate to have him. So I really want to keep this conversational, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. I also have some lightning rounds, which will be fun. You got to keep everyone on their toes now. We're back in person. But really, open it up to the group initially. But the concept of public-private partnerships is not new. Silicon Valley really came out of a lot of the investment that the Department of Defense made during World War II. And something that we think about a lot is just at a very high level, why are they important? Why are public-private partnerships important? How do they help both the federal government or the state government or the local government and private companies collaborate more effectively? What's the incentive for them? I don't know, Josh, if you want to get started.
Sure. So there are incredible efficiencies to the capital markets, but they're not perfect. And so not everything can be purely motivated by a profit and a revenue. And so it's really important to have mechanisms and structures and norms and expectations about how government and the public sector mission is going to work with companies in places where the simple transactional nature of the relationship is really inadequate to accomplish the objective. And so I think both when I was in government and now when I'm in the commercial world, thinking about partnership beyond just the financial transaction is really essential, because there are things that companies, not only mine, but many companies really perfect, and there are things that government really perfect. And so you want to have that specialization come together in ways that really advance the interests of both. And there's plenty of situations where there's a deep complementarity between civil society and nonprofit organizations and between companies and the governments. So we have to optimize for that. Obviously, there's plenty of situations where the simplest way to get the mission done is write a contract, and that works great for us too. But we really have to figure out when we can do creative, interesting alignments between the kinds of organizations represented on this panel, which leads to awesome things like this fact.
That's great. And to piggyback on that, Dr. Rhodes, Austin Community College has invested a significant amount of time and money into supporting Army Futures Command and Army Software Factory. Why'd you do it?
Because we believe in innovation plus collaboration is going to be leading to transformation. And we believe deeply in that. And so what we look at is who are the partners who actually bring the same types of strategies and futuristic thinking that we have. And so, I can't think of a better partner that we have than Army Futures Command. And it started with General Murray. So General Mike Murray, when he was appointed here, came in, and one of the first things he did was actually visit with me at one of our campuses. And in that conversation, we started to talk about what can we do together. And ultimately, it led to this happening. But it is exactly that. It's looking at who can be the best partners. And then, then he brings in two of the brightest and most charming young men that I have ever met in Lieutenant Colonel Errico and Major Zuniga. And they just took off with Army Futures Command, and just what a marvelous relationship, partnership it's been. And then you add Abdul here as a part of that. And it just brings the collaboration together and the relationship and looking at foreseeing what's the future look like and how can we work together so that not only the soldiers but our students can work together collaboratively to solve real world problems in a collaborative nature, working in teams.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So all three of you have served in currently serve or have served in some form of public sector capacity. What was your desire to serve? What made you want to help the government, the state, the local, federal government? Abdul, the notion of a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army is a completely different concept. I was an Air Force civilian before coming, and that is not something that the Air Force offers. I think it's a very fascinating setup that the Secretary of the Army has created. What made you want to participate in that?
Well, thank you. So first of all, I came here as an international student from Pakistan and went to school here from high school, last year of high school, and then did my undergrad and grad. Did not know anything about the Army. I was not thinking anything close to what I would be doing today. But I was right next to Fort Hood in Killeen. That's where I got involved in the community, became the past chairman of the board for the Chamber of Commerce, and got involved in the Association of the United States Army. Got to meet a lot of commanding generals who will come. One of them, some of you know, General Milley, was a 3-Corps commander at that time, and got to meet him and talk to him on a lot of technology stuff that he was dealing with at that time at 3-Corps. And later on, he became the chief. So that kind of helped on that aspect of it, and he was the one who actually was involved in selecting and so forth for the Army Futures Command. And so I think my giving back is that as this country has given me so much, and I want to give back. So that's my personal notion to it. But I think as we are trying and understanding the whole modernization concept in the DoD sector, as Josh has a different background on that side, he's been doing it for a little bit longer than I have. But realizing and educating the commanders who are working on a day-to-day basis, that what other options do they have, and what can we do to help support using technology. I think that's somewhat of my mission to hopefully accomplish that in the near future.
So just like we were talking about this yesterday, it blows my mind. The Army is the only organization that has someone like you in this role. And I would just, if you are in a different part of the department of the government, you should be asking yourself, what is the civilian aid to my secretary or my commander, and how do we just populate our whole system with that blending of perspectives? It's a really awesome thing that the Army has done, and you can see the impact that you're able to have working side by side with people in uniform and other civilian leaders. It's something that we should be expanding.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, and even the CASA role in the Army, it was not initially was consistent of what exactly the background of the personal professional that the people were involved in it. So Secretary McCarthy at that time, and of course General Milley and others, just got me included in a lot of the technology concepts of what they were working on, and the relationships I had, and of course Austin Community College and other private companies, including Google and others, how they embraced that concept as well. So that's been fun.
I can't emphasize enough how important that role is to us in cementing the relationship between Austin Community College and the Army. And he has been an integral part in making things happen and in information exchange up and down the chain of command within the Army. That's a critical role.
Absolutely. I couldn't foot stomp more. The notion of having all these different civilian aides across the country that are advocating for their region and advocating for the soldiers that they support in that region is something that is unparalleled and incredibly unique to the Army. I mean, coming from the Air Force thinking that we were the best at modernization, because I was biased, obviously, and seeing that there's so much innovation within the Army currently, and a lot of it is because of this notion of connecting with the private sector and the local public sector in ways that are things that don't currently happen. It's been really wonderful.
There's nothing wrong with a little healthy intra-service rivalry. And I think we all know that helps. You know.
Yeah.
It does. I wasn't an Army contractor previously, so I feel like I've spread my level out. Now this is like a level 4 spicy. In the software factory, we have a pepper scale of like what's spicy and what's not. This is like probably like a level 4 question. It's for you, Josh, primarily.
Naturally.
But, we've often seen some hesitancy from Silicon Valley technical companies that want to work with the DoD, whether for moral, financial reasons. There's too much red tape. I can't support the mission that you're doing. And then we've also seen, on the flip side, that dozens of tech companies that have stood up over the last few years that are really focused solely on the defense sector. You look at Palantir, you look at Second Front, you look at other companies like this. So why are some organizations more or less likely to work with the Department of Defense?
That is a great question. So, I think around the time that this sort of meme or theme about Silicon Valley distancing themselves from DoD came into play, obviously everyone knows Google was part of that controversy 5 years ago. And I think most people really misunderstood what was going on at that moment and overinterpreted or overdetermined the sense that Silicon Valley was distant from the department. And it had to do with the way the AI community was raising concerns and raising flags about the way AI is built and how that can lead to unintended consequences. And that really created this lens that there was this antipathy towards DoD. But if you really understand and unpack what a lot of the critics were getting at, they had really legitimate concerns about the brittleness and the fragility of some of these systems, and they weren't confident that the department understood the potential unintended consequences of the power that they were unleashing and unlocking. And that is a very juicy headline. And it got a lot of media coverage and a lot of attention. And it turned into this broader polarization argument that I think is pretty misleading. You, in your question, got to the heart of the issue, which is the real reason that most Silicon Valley companies don't want to work with DoD and why many investors and VCs don't want to invest in those companies' business models is because DoD is such a terrible customer. And I did many listening tours in Silicon Valley, talking to the investors and talking to the entrepreneurs and talking to the software engineers to understand their concerns. As a design thinker, it was really an anthropological study of understanding what was really going on in this relationship and how could we fix it. And over again, I heard that engineers in the Valley loved DoD's unique data sets. They loved the hard engineering problems. They were excited about the mission. They could not square their enthusiasm for the mission with what it did for their business model. So two things have changed that are really important. First, DoD has made an enormous intellectual investment in responsible AI. And my proudest work as a public servant was helping Eric Schmidt and the Defense Innovation Board write DoD's AI principles, which have been totally embraced. And so I think the big difference is now people look at DoD as a leader in ethical AI, not a follower, which is an incredible development for this country that all Americans should be proud of, because it sets the tone for the whole Western world. And we're not in a vacuum here. We see what is happening right now in Russia, and we should all be very proud that we as a democracy adopt AI in a fundamentally different way than China and autocracy will. So that problem has been at least partially addressed. The other thing that's really important is happening here at the Army Futures Command and at AFWorks and SoftWorks and NavalX and all these other places, which is DoD is learning to be a much better customer. And Silicon Valley has noticed, and venture capitalists have noticed. And so we are seeing investments in some of the companies you mentioned and many others that are being very disruptive. I think space is a perfect example, and there's Austin-based companies doing that kind of work. So I think that the economics are changing as DoD becomes a more mature and sophisticated buyer. And just to complete the story, and sorry for a long-winded answer, but I'm very passionate about this, Google is a fundamentally different company now than it was then and is completely committed to the DoD mission in a way that is very public and irreversible. And that is a very, very important thing for me as a Googler and someone that cares a lot about this mission. So I think we've really seen an important course correction there. And I hope that the rest of Silicon Valley takes notice and that we are now in a new era of collaboration and partnership that puts that, moment in time, permanently behind.
No, I think that's great. Abdul, are you seeing something similar with the companies here in Austin or your private sector counterparts, a more of a desire to work within the federal space?
Yes, I think the entire concept of Army Futures Command being in Austin, that was one of the main reasons for it. And having Army Applications Lab, as some of you know, being here, been working with the small businesses and trying to understand what is their hard issues for a small business to do it. Running myself a small business, it's always a hard challenge that when we are talking about 18-month sales cycle from RFQ, RFI, RFP, and all that. I mean, this for small businesses is so hard to get involved in several of those things because there's an 18 months cycle for that. So I think that's the hardest thing which small businesses are getting challenged by. But as Army is working on that, I know DoD other services as well are working on it. But on the small businesses side, I think there's lack of understanding, like what exactly they need to do. They've never heard of the word cage code and Dunn's number and those basic concept of that is missing. So having those challenges are very, very real when you're talking to a small 2 to 3 person startup company that they're trying to figure out how to do business with.
Absolutely. And I know this panel isn't about acquisitions or agile acquisitions, but I'd be remiss if I didn't foot stomp. The department doesn't do a good job of making contracts and whatever the funding amount be, something that is attainable for a small business to be awarded. You have these $100 million, $150 million contracts. There's no way a small business could compete with that. They don't have the infrastructure in place. And so something that I'm really passionate about is opening up the aperture and making those smaller dollar amount awards so that it can be something that is attainable for a small business. Because there's so many good ones in this space that just don't get the light of day because they just can't even compete with those high dollar amounts.
And I think, to be fair, on the other side, as you're mentioning, acquisition executives, and hopefully there's not that many here, but the contracting officers are trying to understand, for them to understand how exactly to grade the small businesses. Their background is not tech savvies, right? So they are trying to understand as well what exactly, as we've been talking about agile and all those things. I mean, how much do they understand? What is the difference between it? Are we still going after the low-cost model? Is that the right model to go to, right? And especially in the development cycle and a lot of other areas of technology, including cyber, I think it's really, really hard just to say, well, they were the cheapest, so that's why we went with X company.
Yeah. And bringing that back to talent management, I know there's a panel on that later today, so I won't steal that panel's thunder, but what can public-private partnerships do to help increase and close that talent gap between soldiers, service members, government civilians, and the tech sector when it comes to software development skill sets, AI, machine learning? I mean, Dr. Rhodes, I know that's a big investment here within Austin Community College, if you want to speak to that.
You know, and let me add to the previous question too. Just from our standpoint of the ability to contract between the Army and ACC through an intergovernmental service agreement was kind of new for the Army. And it worked very well for us and to establish that relationship here. So I just want to say kudos that they made it happen, and it works well for us. So when we take a look at training and what are the skill sets necessary for the future, and that's what AFC is doing, is taking a look at how do they change the Army to look at the future. And that's exactly what we're doing too. And so it aligns perfectly with ACC. And when we take a look at IT and software development and all of that, what's important and critical and what has happened here at Army Futures Command, and what we're looking at too at the same time, is how do you use state-of-the-art education instructors who have the knowledge, who have the wisdom that can bring to the classroom, that can bring the right curriculum so that you've got the right skill sets, the right software, so that they're using the most up-to-date software to develop new tools to solve those real-world problems. And so education, so I would say education plus incubation. And when I talk about incubation, it's the fact that we're bringing in business partners into this. And the soldiers are working in teams to develop product. And we've got integrated within that our business partners, such as VMware, who are making that happen, who are adding to that value. So really you're incubating new ideas, creative ideas and solutions. And then, it goes from education to incubation to how do we then turn that into acceleration into, the communities and into the world. That's why we get so excited at ACC about working with AFC, is because education, which is, that's us, and incubation, and we've got incubators. And so how do you put those together to accelerate the solving of world problems?
Absolutely. And I want to foot stomp the real innovative nature of this relationship, the intergovernmental service agreement, not a contract, simply an agreement that provides this space, this environment with Austin Community College, something that benefits both of us. Obviously, the soldiers love coming here and working here and being a part of this ecosystem within the community college. But there's other types of innovative partnership relationships, like partnership intermediary agreements, or small business innovation research grants, CRADAs. And Software Factory is certainly not the only organization that leverages them. Futures Command, many organizations leverage these types of authorities. But what would you say to organizations within the Department of Defense that are looking to utilize these authorities? There's often taboo in trying to do something different. FAR Part 15, IDIQs, is a very common contract vehicle because it's safe, it's understood, but not necessarily these niche, smaller agreements or contracts that aren't always leveraged. So what would you say, from your public sector, from your private sector experience to these organizations? Like, why should DoD organizations leverage these types of arrangements? Josh.
Can I take that?
Yes.
I'm so glad you asked that. So the reason that they should is because it's time for us to care more about winning than compliance. Like, our country is in a real contest, not a make-believe contest. And we have put such an emphasis and such a priority on fairness and consistency and predictability and on compliance to avoid anyone having to learn new skills, do new things, or be even slightly out of their comfort zone. And I think there's a real disconnect when you don't understand the consequences of that attitude is dire for our nation. And we are so preoccupied with single individuals avoiding unwanted attention from our most senior leaders up to our most junior entry-level contracting officers. And the ecosystem-wide effects of that, the rippling effects of that, is like it's like barnacles on the hull of the ship. It's just slowing us down and slowing us down. So like, why would you try to do something new in a standard like a PIA? I don't know, maybe because there's no way to accomplish the mission anymore without doing new and different things. And so one of the things the advice I gave some Hill staffers was, you do not check with the department on how many of the authorities that you've been given are being implemented. You should be having hearings not on the one time the one PEO made the one mistake that led to the one lost dollar. I want to see hearings where you call our leaders onto the carpet to say, here are all the authorities that I gave you that you haven't implemented. Why haven't you implemented them? I gave you this new direct hiring authority. How many people got it? How many people have you brought in this new way? We need to be tracking the numbers of times that waivers are being used. We instead track how many times a bureaucratic process has been followed to like 5 sigmas of accuracy, when in reality, what I want to know, if I'm a secretary or leader, I want to know how many waivers have you used? Because that's a sign to me, an indicator that you are leaning in and doing what it takes. And I think another good example we should be looking at is, how do we figure out how many times someone is doing a new and interesting thing? That is an interesting proxy for innovation. If you see a command that's like, we have done, a record number of totally standard procedures this year, I'd be like, okay, well, so the excellence in operations in your organization is really healthy. Where's the excellence in exploration and the excellence in innovation? How do I know that you're doing experimentation? I mean, one of the things that's really cool about Google, and then I'll get off my soapbox, is that when we set what we call an objective and key result, we give the highest grade to people that hit 70%. Because if you achieve 100% of your objective, then your objectives were not 10x and they were not ambitious, and you were lazy and you gave yourself an easy goal which you attained. And if it's too low, then you're not performing. So we see 70% as being right. And it's the same thing for a VC. You want to have some edge investments in your portfolio, and you want to have some safe bets. And that's how we need to think about this. So I'm excited that there are people out there that are trying to do new things and getting shot down sometimes. That means you're trying hard, and we need to be trying hard.
That's great. Dr. Rhodes, Abdul.
I will echo Josh, but the good news is that we are doing some of those things. Army Software Factory, right? I don't know, 5 years ago we were thinking about that. So when initial conversations I had with Jerome McConville, Secretary McCarthy, General Murray, 4 of us were sitting on a table and having this very early stage conversations about what we will be doing and how we should be doing it. I think that tells you that we are thinking a little bit out of the box. Now, is it one every 10 years? That's the whole thing we need to change, right? So absolutely, I think I totally agree with Josh on that concept of it, that we need to utilize, because there are a lot of, like you have mentioned, all the names, that we have a lot of authorities. We are just not utilizing it, and I think that's something is to really look at.
Yeah, I would love an environment where, just speaking about academia, every major command or every unit in the Army, the DoD, had an academic partner, just full stop. There was somebody who was aligned to work with them, and that's happened in a lot of different universities, Georgia Tech, here with UT as well as Austin Community College. But how do we champion that more so? Because there's authorities that allow for this. We just don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think this is a proof of concept right here. That can be expanded across the country. And it's also about leveraging resources and actually finding the right partners to bring in too, because I take a look at some of the funds that we just received through the governor's office, through the DIAG grant, and that's to actually create on this campus a collaboratorium. And most people say, collaboratorium, what in the heck is that? So we've got to find a sexier name for it than collaboratorium. But it's really bringing together industry partners, like Apple and like Google, like, all of our partners, of which all of you can be partners in this. And so stay in tune for that. But it is looking at how do we bring the state together with the federal, with the Army, with the college, with the university, and how do we work together to do that? So I'm full of hope
That's great. Just seeing all the innovative work we've done within the software factory, from a soldier talent management to acquisitions to actual technology choices, it gives me a lot of hope too for the department, that we can actually like move forward and actually make this something that is more institutionalized. We're going to move to my lightning round questions, which you did not receive ahead of time. So I'm going to ask them. They're going to be quick responses. Topic off the cuff.
What spiciness level are these?
They are not spicy.
Yeah.
I would say they're like 1 or 2 peppers at the most.
1 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, very minimal.
But
spice.
you have to eat them very quickly, so it kind of adds up. All right, I
Yes,
got it.
exactly. It definitely could increase. So we'll just go down the line. Your favorite tech book?
Diffusion of Innovation by Everett Rogers.
Favorite textbook?
Tech.
Oh, textbook.
I mean, you probably
Wow.
have some
Yeah.
favorite
Hey.
Quantum physics and
Yeah. So I'm not in the tech sector. So
favorite fiction.
yeah, or the self-help
Management book.
Management book.
self-help.
Self-help
So are you
management
saying
book.
I
Yeah.
need self-help?
No, I'm trying to keep this lightning round lightning.
Okay, Animal Farm.
All
Okay.
right. There we go.
Very appropriate for the
Yeah.
acquisition discussion, by the way.
Very much.
I'm a big reader on different, so not really a favorite tech book, but I will say, magazines and so forth. So I'm a reading kind of guy, so I will not be able to say one exact book. But,
Okay.
I'm going to do an extra one for him because he didn't really give you one. Everyone in the Army Software Factory cohorts that come through with software should read Ender's Game.
Understand.
Understand.
All
Okay.
right.
It
I recommend.
snaps from the back.
I recommend Range.
Yeah.
Check-
Rain.
Yeah.
I forgot about Rain. I
Yes.
just read that. That is great.
Fantastic.
So I don't want to be embarrassed in front of, I'm teaching a doctoral class at UT and my students are here and I don't want to be embarrassed with that. So please stand up real quick.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Future leaders of higher education throughout the country.
Excellent.
Perfect. Welcome. All right. If you could be any leader, hero, tech hero for a day, who would it be?
How about you, Hannah?
Oh,
That's
whoa.
That's lame. I appreciate that though.
No, actually, I'm going to embarrass you for a minute. I'm going to say
Please
so
don't. I
I
get
was
so red.
yeah, you're gonna blush at this one, but everyone should know this about Hannah and the quality of people we have here. So I emailed like 30 or 40 people in the department that I trust about who's really, really, really smart about the future of talent management to help map the network. And 5 people said you. You were the only person to be nominated by more than 2 people. It was like everyone got 1, a few people got 2, and you got 5.
Wow.
So people know because of what you did at Kessel Run and what you're doing here, they know that you understand how to get there. So I was not saying it lightly. I meant it.
Thanks, John.
So after Hannah, then I would say Josh, and then I would say Tim Cook.
Talent management person. I think that's. I think we all are struggling on that right now, and probably in the next few years, we really need to look into that. Not just in the DoD sector. I think the private sector, we all are struggling. How we can manage the talent management and how we will be able to grow that.
Absolutely. What senior leader or senior government official did you fanboy over when you met them?
I think it's really unfair that I'm next to you and I No,
You
this
switch
is
it
an
up.
easy. This is an easy one. Michelle Flournoy. I mean, she is an incredible leader of people and also incredible command of the issues. And working for her was a dream. And I hope I get to work for her again one day.
General Mike Murray.
Good choice.
Same, General Mike Murray, because he really taught me and been a mentor to me for the last couple of years for Army in general and then Secretary McCarthy.
Yeah, General Murray is, I think, one of a kind. I've never seen a senior leader so dedicated to something like this. So I would totally agree. Elon Musk or Mark Cuban?
Can I abstain?
No.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, because we are currently doing a lot of training for Tesla.
It's a good answer.
It's a good answer.
I'll go with Cuban as I have some business relationships there.
Fair enough. If you could change anything about anything that you've done in the last 3 months as part of your job, what would it be?
If I could change anything about part of my job in the last 3 months, it would be.
Yes. What would you have done differently in the last?
We had, this is personal, we're in the middle of a reorg, and I think I could have done a better job of reaching out to the people affected by that and just been more proactive in those communications. I mean, I think we all have seen a lot of reorganization in DoD, a lot of reorganization in other companies, and I think we often are looking up or at the bottom line and forgetting how disruptive these changes are for the human beings that are going through them. And there's a concept in psychology of holding, which is a unique quality that leaders have, and you really have to hold people through the. And I didn't live up to my expectations.
I should have asked my wife more frequently what I should wear.
It took me a second. I actually concur with that. Or like if I have to give my husband fashion advice a lot.
Was there any photographic evidence of the mistakes?
Were you wearing
that we could
a
put on
clown top?
Instagram?
Yeah.
I would say for my company, I'm making a lot of changes as small business growing on a day-to-day basis, seems like it. So I have a challenge over there as a talent management too, and so I think reorging the organization as I am doing for the last 2-3 months. Of course, you make mistakes on which person of what, where, how. So I think probably that.
That's great. And I will answer that too. I wish I have delegated more. That's always been the thing. I want to hold all the context and be able to be superhuman, and you can't. You have to delegate. 2 more questions, and then I got of the lightning round, of course.
I'm really good. I'm glad that Josh is first.
Mac or PC?
Mac. I mean, a Chromebook. Next question.
You even have a pen.
Yeah, you got your Google pen.
Mac, because my daughter works for Apple.
There you go.
PC.
There you go. And last but not least, most important question of the day. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Harry Potter?
There's probably some rebellion people in the house here. I'm going to go Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
All right, no Harry Potter fans. See how it is. It's fine. All right, so bring it back. We got about 10 minutes or so before we go into Q&A. We talked a lot about championing public-private partnerships. We talked about some of the struggles that organizations face in working with the government. But what advice would you give to a company, a nonprofit, or an academic institution that wants to partner with the DoD or the Army? What advice would you give them? You want to start, Dr. Rhodes?
Oh. I had to turn off. I was getting,
You're getting buzzed?
getting a call. Yeah. Okay. So what was the question again?
So, what advice would you give to a company, a nonprofit, or academic institution that's looking to partner with the DoD or the Army?
I would say, be transparent, be honest and upfront, and don't be afraid of any of the hurdles. You got to conquer them.
I would say get educated. If it's which agency that you're trying to go, if it's Army, if it's Air Force, Navy, and others, there's a lot of resources available. There's always small business offices in each one of the services as well. DoD has it. And a lot of other organizations there's nonprofits who are trying to help as well. So I think there's resources there. It's just finding the right one and be very focused, because if you're just trying to get into all of the DoD market, that would be really hard. And if you're talking about small to medium-sized businesses, be focused and find the right resources who can at least get you to the right path.
there's 3 things I tell my team all the time. First, be patient. It takes so much longer than you think it's going to take. Second, you have to love your customer. I mean, public sector is not like commercial. You have to be mission driven. I've seen so many people, especially in the tech space, just dump on the department, dump on the public servants who serve the department, and like that just does not work. You have to be not only committed to the outcome, but you have to like deeply care and understand the nature of how bureaucratic organizations function and why, and you can't be contemptuous of the department because it isn't changing as much as you want or as fast as you want, and so you have to come from a very open-hearted place. And then third is do not ever lead with the technology solution. Always lead with the mission. So we call this moving from product market fit to product mission fit. Right? You have to be solving a meaningful mission problem for the customer, and like the technology that you're using in order to do that should be irrelevant.
That's great. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. This is the last question we have, and it's probably like a 3-pepper. It's not significant, but there was a recent report that came out from the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions and Sustainment that documented the consolidation of the defense industrial base since the 1990s. They used the example of like the prime contractors for the aerospace and defense industry, and noted that the population that has shrunk from 51 to 5. There's only 5 now. The report concluded that this had a negative impact on the ability for niche or like non-traditional companies to really get a foothold into the space and working with the DoD. So what can the DoD organizations within and outside the DoD be able to do to shore up a more robust and heterogeneous industrial base? And when I mean industrial base, I also mean academic and nonprofit organizations. So it's not super spicy, but it's a little spicy. Josh, you want to get started?
And again, okay, thanks, Anna. So like the report is accurate. But I do think that they kind of missed, actually, the forest for the trees. I mean, it is historically, empirically accurate, but I think that it really undervalues and underappreciates that we are at the dawn of a new era in the defense industry, and that there's actually an enormous amount of data that suggests that we are at a turning point where we are about to witness the deconsolidation of the defense industrial base, driven by the emergence of a new tier of venture capital investment in dual-use companies, and not only dual-use companies, but defense-first companies. And there have been more defense-first tech startups, true cloud-native, AI-first, cloud-first tech startups that are focused on the DoD mission that did not exist 3 or 4 years ago. And it's in key industries of the future. So for example, electric vehicles, particularly electric air vehicles, hypersonic weapons, new rocket engines. You all know the companies I'm referring to here. Commercial space and imagery. These are whole new areas that are driven by software. And let's be honest, the prime's not super good at that, not really good at software or AI. So we are seeing that as the entire nature of warfare is shifting to be influenced by the tectonic forces of modernization, we are seeing an emergence of a new class of company, entrepreneur, and investor. And so I actually think this is the best time in the last century to be investing in defense and creating new defense companies. So I think the report really missed the point. Like we are at the inflection of something incredibly new and incredibly exciting. And by the way, it's going to happen in Austin, Texas.
It's true.
Yeah.
Love that.
What he said, but I would add to it. Find the thought partners in the community that you can process with. There is one here that has been so helpful for us, and that's Larry Peterson. I don't know if he's here, but that is one of the thought partners that has really helped us kind of think outside of the box and to look for those opportunities together.
I think in the last 5 years or so, like Josh is mentioning, there's so much more going on from the startup arena and from the last small to medium-sized companies who are bringing. So the report, what states, absolutely does not really focus on those things. So I think that is something which is, I think, needs to be done a little bit more research on. I think the last decade or so, there's a lot got changed, which we are not sometimes giving the credit to. But there's a lot more to do. Trust me, we all agree on that. But what we can do and how we can do, I think that's where the DoD leaders needs to really put their mindset into it, that how we can all work together to make that happen. Because primes, traditional, are not the ones who are bringing that value.
Couldn't agree more. I want to thank our panelists so much for spending the last hour with us. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone. We have about 10, 15 minutes left. I think we want to open it up to
Yeah,
Q&A.
we do. First off, hey, the future's in pretty good hands, isn't it? Like, if you look at this panel and what I've seen over the past few years around really making that innovation around software, the people on this panel are making that happen. A lot of OGs up here around really making that go, right? So definitely a round of applause for that. I captured a few things. Well, again, there'll be some like passion, genuine, authentic, and confident. That's what this panel brings, right? And where we go as partnership is where this conversation is starting, but it's really where the future is going to be. So again, thank you. It was fascinating listening to this whole conversation. So I also just want to recognize Hannah. I want to foot stomp that. Like, International Women's Day was here, and I saw you get a lot of shout out on LinkedIn. So you really well deserve that. And the team around me knows, like, leadership is not title, leadership is behavior. And the behavior demonstrated up here about like where leadership is going in the DoD is phenomenal. So thank you. So anyway, I had to give those, I was touched by, and the passion that came out of here was incredible. So I think we have a few microphones floating around. Brad back there. I got a feeling there's going to be like a few questions around this one. So gentleman in the back has his hand up. You can do that.
So, Bill Conley, I'm a Chief Technology Officer for Mercury Systems. I am also a bureaucrat, and it's been 925 days since I've been in the Pentagon as a bureaucrat. It's been 2 days since I've had a drink, but at South by Southwest, that seemed less appropriate to mention. So with that in mind, the question, right, there's the kind of the public-private partnerships we need today. Software, Josh, you hit on it, in your last answer there. Microelectronics, there's a ton of RFIs out there on the street right now. If we look, though, at what is the runway we have between now and 2030, what are the things we need to start preparing for today so we can have the right public-private partnerships in place in 2030 to be successful in the future?
I'll let when you take.
Go ahead, John.
Well, one is find a local community college to partner with, and I'm honest, truly, that's one of the answers because there's one in almost every community, and they can be great partners because what we need to look at is what are the right skill sets in preparing for the future, and we take a look at those types of skill sets that have short-term in nature but are stackable credentials towards an associate degree, towards a bachelor's degree, whether it's in software development, advanced manufacturing, or in the healthcare professions. But look at those types of partners that can help position you and project you into the future.
I was hoping you were going to say that because it's a lot more meaningful coming from a professional educator, but I was going to say that investing in upskilling the entire American workforce is the most important thing, because let's say we spent billions of dollars to bring microelectronics fabrication back to America. We couldn't populate the factory. We just don't have the skill set or the investment in STEM. So I would say exactly what he said. The other change I would make, and this is really wonky, but I'm kind of with my people here, so I know you're going to get it. It's not about technology. It's an important process change that the department needs to make so that we don't lose to China. And that is, we have to change the planning, programming, budgeting, and execution process. And I think many of you know, or if you're not, you should know that Congress established a commission to look at budget reform. But I will tell you that the ability to make resource allocation changes within 1 year, and I know you're talking to a fellow bureaucrat here, is the difference between being able to have the unity of decision among the leadership team that has a vision and have them able to resource that vision at the same time. If there is a 2-year latency between when you make a decision and when you can do something about it, we will never have the agility as a country to respond. And the best example of that is how we have already lost 5G. Because by the time the leaders of the department figured out that it was a crisis, it was very difficult to be able to make the necessary investments in order to change it. And so we did extraordinary surgery in the budget to be able to come up with something like $600 or $700 million in year, which was an astonishing achievement, and it is 1/20th of China's 5G investment. So that, I think, is the most important thing we need to do to get to 2030, is because that we know the disruptive technology of 2031 isn't something we're going to effectively plan for in 2026.
One more thing I will add, that open to see other services, what they are doing in the DoD sector. For example, if Army is doing something different, for example, software factory, other services are coming, or trying to see what the Air Force has done and learn from the mistakes that they have made, so we are not making it again. I think that sometimes is the hardest thing, that we do not collaborate on a lot of those things together within the services.
From the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum. So when you take a look at Secretary Austin's memo from last year, where he said that innovation for the modernization of the force is a priority, and you look at here we are a year later, and it's kind of the season of going back to the SecDef and saying, this is how we met your priorities or did not. From the panel, how would you advise people who have to make that report on their innovation accomplishments, both in their activity and in their impact? And I think I was kind of drawing from your congressional piece, Josh, on thinking about that question.
I think when you're reporting to your senior leadership, it's got to be 80% of the emphasis is answering the question that they asked and giving the information in the way that they asked it, because that's just the reality that we're all faced with. But I think that if you can make room for that 20% of saying something surprising of, these are the things that we tried that didn't work out, and this is what we learned. Here's how we applied the scientific method to figuring out how to improve your organization. We didn't fail fast, we learned fast. I think that's a really helpful frame and mental model. I think it's really valuable in doing that reporting to highlight some of the human stories, because we often talk the talk on talent management, but we don't always walk it. And I think it's really important to include in what you are reflecting up to the leadership about the investments and decisions that you and your organizations made in investing in people, which is something that I think the Army Leaders Command has done incredibly well. And not only talk about the mission accomplishments or the operational achievements or the budget achievements, but talk about how our innovation efforts are growing a generation of defense leaders and military leaders that think differently. Because I think that is the most important piece, and it always is the last thing. Like we always have a list of priorities, and people and culture is usually on there, but it's often tokenistic. And I think we all need to know that our leaders are putting it front and center, and we're seeing a lot more of that, but we have a long way to go.
But I think educating the leaders is also a challenge sometimes, right? Understanding them that what exactly the need is. We all have so many resources, but if the leader itself understands what exactly they need to, I think that's where the challenge also exactly. We were talking yesterday a couple of times on other venues that what exactly is the challenge for the leader to make a decision. If they do not even understand that's in their hands or that they can utilize, then it will be hard.
Actually, let's say Trish is not just a member of DEF, she's also the leader of DEF. And if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to have it all year round, you should see her after and make sure that you become a member of DEF.
Absolutely.
Got a mic up front, please.
I got one real quick.
Oh, sorry.
My name is Austin Hurling, the Chief Data Officer here at the Software Factory. So Josh, this is inspired by your last answer. You're not necessarily the only one that has to answer it, though. So
Thank you.
with the discussion of sort of like this new round or like this new class of startups that are focused on defense innovation, like what role does the Software Factory play in that? Like how does the Army Software Factory, which relies right now on like an unfair advantage of modern computing practices, like modern development, team structure, that kind of thing. Like, how do we remain competitive? How do we show and continue to show value in an environment where we're not so unique anymore?
A great question for the actual entrepreneur on the panel who runs such a business.
So absolutely, I think the Army Software Factory is a model for not just for the services, but also for the small businesses and the startups, right? When we were having initial conversations with Lieutenant Colonel Errico and Major Zuniga, we had the same conversations about it. What exactly they will need initially to even have that, basically it was a startup, right? And how we will have that done. And then all the bureaucracies came into play, that what, where, how many people we can have initially, what will be the, how we will be able to select the candidates, and then how we will be able to pick the projects that they will be working on. That was the most hardest thing that we were dealing with at that time. But understanding the concept of it and understanding how the organizations is working on that, I think that's the basic initial challenge that you will have on any small to medium sized business.
I would add to that the great thing about the software factory is rank doesn't matter as to who gets in. And it really takes a look at the untapped talent that exists within an organization such as the Army, and positioning those individuals to be superstars and to be mentored by some of the best in the companies represented here and that have worked with the software factory, so that it can transition and transform beyond just the software factory into the Army, into the business and industry world. So it's beyond what it was originally kind of created to do, which was train soldiers for the future.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm a vet and I work in tech and I'm still in the reserves. We said China maybe like 3 times. I guess my question gets to how do we keep moving forward in innovation and how do we inject resiliency into this public-private partnership space when we know we have, like, in great power competition, active technological espionage in the system? Like, I work in a major tech company, all the AI engineers are Chinese. So what's the way of framing this, or without being so afraid, like you said, where we're not innovating anymore?
Very good point. So we had very tough conversations about that topic with the senior leaders in the Army as well. For example, major universities are having the same problem when they're doing the research projects for DoD. They just do not have the students who are U.S. citizens, who have background on security clearances and those kind of things. And that's why I go back to it, where the education piece is so useful for us to start working on it now. About 7 years ago, I got invited to do a speaking engagement up in Shenzhen. Came back and did a lot of research on which Ivy League schools in states are doing any kind of cybersecurity program for undergrad. The majority of them had the master graduate programs for cybersecurity, but none of them had the undergrad program for cyber. So that's just one example. Thanks to local congressman, he worked really hard with me and others, and we were able to do a cybersecurity center locally at A&M University. And I think that's a huge challenge that we have, and we'll be having even more if we will not start working on it now. Yes, there is about 800 to 1,000 soldiers who are getting out just at Fort Hood down the street from us. They already have security clearances. They already have all the background understanding. And so how we can utilize that talent and how we can manage them to go through, if it's cyber, it's DevOps, and so forth, how we can get that going. Just like Garrett just mentioned from Austin Community College, that how we can get them involved in a lot of other companies and corporations which are right here in Austin. So very good point. I don't think there is an answer, at least from my side right now, but I'm hoping that we all will work together on getting that done.
I think we need to have a much more nuanced and sophisticated dialogue about technology competition. We, for the last several years, have been very focused on tech protection and not on tech promotion. And so we have a very law enforcement-oriented approach, which tends to be actually more punitive on American companies because we have the jurisdiction to enforce, rather than a much more nuanced approach of understanding the nature of the competition that we're in. We are tending to treat China like the Soviet Union, which is a completely flawed analogy. If you believe the brilliant 2018 NDS, as I do, that we are now in a competition of fast followership, then we should be much more concerned about how fast America can race than on whether or not China is also benefiting from our advances. So I would love to see American companies employing the smartest AI engineers in the world, wherever they're from, and creating a society those people want to support and stay in, and making sure that we are emphasizing getting those technologies into the hands of our warfighters faster than China can steal them or grow their own. But we're so preoccupied with adversarial capital that we're not making a commensurate investment in figuring out how to actually get technology from any startups, American startups or Chinese infiltrated startups or any startups, into the hands of the warfighters. So we're so worried about what they could steal from us, but we leave all of the seed corn of innovation on the table, even in our own force. So I think if we spent as much energy trying to get great American innovation and technology to the warfighter, we would worry less about what might also benefit China. Because what we have forgotten is that the gains are very perishable, right? An algorithm is going to expire very quickly. So the question is, how fast can you get the last 2 years of tech modernization into the force? And if we are better at adoption than they are, they will always be stealing obsolescence from us. That's not how we work today. So I'm much more interested in what we do to advance and support and accelerate American companies than I am worried about what China may take from us.
Yeah. Good morning. First of all, sorry. First of all, great panel. I'm from the Caribbean, so both the politics, the culture, everything is going to be different. But I was very interested, and I think, Josh, you're the one who brought up the issue of implementation. I know in the Caribbean, one academic, we have a problem that we call IDD, which really means implementation deficit disorder. So I'm asking, what are some of the mechanisms, for example, that you use to get past some of these bureaucracies that can be, liturgized and a little bit really slow? I know you talk about Barnacles, but what would be some of your recommendations to get past some of that, to move things along? You have a lot of plans, they go nowhere.
Good. Yes, you don't.
So I think that we tend to try to solve things, too much, too fast, rather than embracing iteration, even within our own organizations. And we do that because we want to impress our bosses with how smart we are and how prepared we are, and we're afraid to bring unfinished work forward. And that leads to investing a lot of time too early in prototypes, organizational prototypes, policy prototypes, technological prototypes, when if we could get to a place of iteration and co-creation with our leadership, I think we would drive implementation a lot faster. And so I think if we could, as leaders, set the expectation that we want to see MVPs first all the time. We want to see the rough cut, the rough copy. We don't need it to be staffed out. We don't need every layer of the command to bless it and dilute it and water it down. And I think that would help us get over the initial thresholds of adoption of new ideas and then be able to move to an implementation phase faster. Particularly the way we write requirements today, there's an expectation of meeting an incredibly high degree of specificity and an incredibly high degree of capability. And that is how we've ended up requiring companies to deliver waterfall, which we know is dumb. But we do it anyway, because what we're afraid that if we pay them to deliver something that's fully capable, that they'll somehow screw the government. And I think figuring out how to design contracts that are aimed at having greater agility in the requirements and more upfront implementation is a way to get more execution faster.
So let's have this be the last question.
Hi, my name's Travis McDevitt. I'm from CIU. Curious how you would solve the problem of acquiring commercial tech, especially in terms of software, when a very small percentage of it needs to be written by people who are cleared. So for example, if I was to try to do predictive maintenance on a B-52, which is probably pretty similar to doing predictive maintenance on a Boeing 737, at the end of the day, some of the user interface elements or some of the machine interface elements probably need to be written by somebody who's cleared. And the way I've seen this problem solved lately is that we will harness the commercial landscape and find maybe that small business of uncleared individuals who has a great solution and partner them with a prime vendor who's going to write that code. And it introduces all the problems that you normally have working with the prime vendor, where they end up going and buying that small company and taking that capacity away from us, or they steal their intellectual property, or they manage somehow to create vendor lock, or just make the program not work because they're not customer focused. Can you think of any other ways that we can crack that nut where when a solution only requires 1 or 2% of the code base to be written by cleared individuals, we can still harness easily the talent that's out there in the...
Yeah.
Very good point. Absolutely. I think this is something that we surely has to work together. Actually, I had some conversation with the Small Business Administration as well. It's not just in the DoD space, by the way. It's all over DHS and others as well. And the conversation was the same, that a small business was not able to get contracts, or when they were getting it, they were getting bought out by one of the few. I personally think it's a policy decision, and not just a policy decision in the DoD side, but it's in the contracting policy decision that needs to be done from the Small Business Administration. And understanding that exactly what that model needs to look like. I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards. I did a lot of work on that last year, actually, from the SBA administration in DC and as well as in the Dallas area as well.
Yeah, if I could just add quickly, there tends to be an overclassification of code. We interact with a lot of organizations say, my code is IL5, 100%. And there's no data in it, so how can it be impact level 5? And so something that I think we try to champion here within the Software Factory and with our partners, the CIO, is you can code low and deploy high. You can code it on class level. You can be in an open space. Then as you add the data components, the predictive maintenance part, like, yes, then you're going to need a certain level of certification even. Maybe not even classification you have to maintain. But there's such a risk aversion to even have that model because it's all been on-prem. It's all been done in these very bespoke type of environments. So it's also changing how you're shipping that technology across various environments too. It's something we fight a lot with too, and sometimes we win and sometimes we don't, but that's how we develop software here in the Software Factory, is we code low, everything's on class, the code's on class. The soldiers all have clearances because they're soldiers, but in general, it's not something that would be necessary.
Great question, even better answers. I'm going to close with this from you. Innovation plus collaboration plus transformation. A big round of applause for this. I could do this all day. This is fantastic.